Hi, everyone. I'm Lenny Banovez, the artistic director here at Titan Theater Company in New York City. And welcome to episode 2 of Creative Conversations, where we talk to artistic leaders from across the country. So today we have gone all the way to the other side of our country. And today we have with us the artistic director of PCPA, Mark Booher. Mark, how are you doing today?
I'm doing just fine. We were talking about that just beforehand, that we're all kind of sailing this big wave of unknown and trying to figure out how to have the equilibrium to go, I'm doing fine.
Yeah,
but managing a lot. Yeah.
Yeah, you know, like you said, we were talking about that before we started. And I think it is important to talk about that because we've been kind of trained. The very first thing you say is, how are you doing today? And you get a response of some kind of positive. But right now, the unknown is a thing. So fine sometimes, like you said, covers it, and then sometimes it doesn't. So, you know, as you're kind of navigating through, this is a great way to start an interview, completely different. You know, as you're navigating your day-to-day, where do you find yourself at? Do you mind me asking you that question?
Well, I have to say, it's been changing, and I think that's been important to allow the way in which, you know, we're responding. And you know, and I say that we, not this weird royal we thing, the we of my company, my colleagues and friends here at PCPA, but also, you know, to just accept the fact that things are shifting. They're shifting rapidly. You know, sometimes you find yourself in that sense of shocky denial. It's been really interesting to encounter that kind of primal impulse that we have to, like, we have to keep performing. We have to be working and producing live art. And when that was suddenly interrupted, and suddenly interrupted, not predictably interrupted the way it usually is. We're theater people, so we're used to having, you know, this sort of normal evolution is that things begin, they bloom vibrantly, and then they go, you know, and we're used to that. But this sudden severing that occurred, you know, I think, you know, put this shock in us, and your initial response is, no, we have to keep doing the play.
Yeah.
There is no alternative to that. And you know, and so I think trying to figure out how to press through that, you know, just like you do any other, you know, and you and I have been talking about the kind of, you know, personal, organizational, regional, national griefs that have come with all the letting go. And so, you know, I think the thing is, when we say to our friends, how you doing? And they say, fine, you know, that then, you know, we know that what's underneath that is that we're having a very complicated set of experiences, and that it's changing from day to day, and that it's okay. You know, this sounds like a cliche orama, but it is okay to not be okay. It's okay to be authentically in the struggle. You know, to be dealing with the hardship. And, you know, and then as often as we can, we're like, I'm rising up, I'm figuring it out. And if you're down a little bit, you know, let me put my arm around your waist and you know, I'm gonna help you stand, because it's tough right now. Doing okay. And trying to, you know, balance optimism and authenticity, you know, and because of course there are times when you just feel like, wow, this is super hard, and I'm having trouble seeing a way out. And so it's up and down, but I'm just trying to keep really where I am and keep my eyes up to the horizon as often as I can. That's kind of
You know, we find that here happens a lot in Titan. There's days that it's me. There's days that it's my managing director, Alyssa. There's days that it's one of our artistic associates like Marcus or Wesley, anybody. You can find from day to day. It could be super busy, and we can be doing almost as much, if not more, than we were doing when we were producing shows. And one day it's me, I'm like, come on, everybody, we got it. And the next day I'm like, I can't get out of bed. And it's Alyssa going, you need to get on the phone and talk about this. And I'm like, okay. Because we are so used to the show must go on. we almost, it's in a weird way, used to wear things as a badge of honor when you miss a wedding or something like that. These life moments where like, I'm in a show, there's just nothing I can do. Artists, actors, directors, designers, we build our life on what we're doing next or what we're currently in. And to have the plug pulled, I mean, like you said, there's still sets just sitting on stages. There's no finality to it. So, like you said, the ability to say, I'm fine, and let that be it can be a thing, or there's days that it's not fine. And you want to elaborate on that a little bit more.
Yeah, you know, Lenny, I was just thinking too, the thing, just as we were starting to talk, I was thinking, you know, this conversation is being facilitated by this terrible situation.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, we've worked together, we've enjoyed one another, seen each other a couple of times over the last decade, but to actually get to be in a conversation about how are you doing, how's your organization doing, what does the future look like, on a national basis, you know, but I also wanted to acknowledge that you and I both know that getting to have this conversation is such a privilege. You know, there are people right now, people in California, people in New York who are, you know, whose big dream for today is to have one clear breath followed by another one. You know, people who are like in PPE gear for 14 hours a day, you know, people trying to, you know, figure out how to keep their families, you know, housed and fed and all that stuff. And so I guess the interesting thing about this situation is how that clarifies, you know, how good it is and what a privilege it is to get to be thinking about and talking about things that, you know, are meeting other needful but higher order parts of humanity. You know, we get to stop and go, what does it mean? You know, I guess I just wanted to, I've been appreciating how good it is and actually how simple my tasks in some ways are.
Yeah. Well, I've had this conversation with a couple of fellow actors recently too, where, you know, they're upset or they're angry about something, and then they're like, "But that sounds privileged." And so, what my response is, and you're right, we are very lucky. I mean, look at us. You know, I have a fantastic apartment in New York. Your office is beautiful. You know, we run these great organizations. We have all these things going for us. And you have to allow ourselves to feel the feels. And what I've said is, let yourself feel those. And if they are coming from a place of privilege, acknowledge that, deal with them, because there's going to be somebody that doesn't have the privilege you have that's going to need you in the future. And if you got all your stuff together, you'll be ready for them at that point. Mm-hmm. And so every time I sit and I like hug my wife, or, you know, I pay my cell phone bill, or I take a deep breath because I am healthy, I go, thank you for that. Now I'm ready to help, which is why we're on the video conference right now talking about these things, because I feel right now as organizations and as artists that we have the ability to facilitate this. Now, when we can go to a narrower scope and talk about our artists, the people that you employ, the people that I employ, how we take care of them, how we take care of each other in our community. I think it's a great way to start the interview. So, so thank you for your honesty. That's a beautiful conversation to have right off the bat. Can you tell us a little bit about PCPA? You know, where you're located? Go ahead, run through the whole gamut. Give us the brochure while you're here with us.
Well, we're this is season 56 for us out here on the beautiful California Central Coast. So we're in Santa Barbara County, in the northernmost part of the county. Santa Barbara is on the southernmost. We're on the northernmost part of the county, about 30 miles south of San Luis Obispo, for people who know that groovy college town just up the coast. So, so life is good, you know, right now, because it's been raining. The hills are beautiful, and I'm about 12 miles from the beach. And the fact that we get to make year-round professional theater on the beautiful Central Coast is fantastic. We're a conservatory theater, so we operate, basically we're in production 49 weeks a year. We use the IRTA contract, about 50 full-time employees. And a good chunk of those folks are both the core of the resident artistic company and production company, and the faculty of a 2-year training program for actors and technicians. So everything that we do is absolutely integrates training and professional practice. There's no separation between them. It's like this, giant rolling sphere. But we have usually about 60 actors in the program, about 20 professional technicians in training, and then 25 or so professional interns who are with us for 9 to 12 months in a year. So in total, here on the Central Coast, at any given time, usually about 150 people making art in 3 theater spaces, 2 up here in Santa Maria on the campus of Allen Hancock College, and 1 where you have performed, the beautiful Solvang Festival Theater down in Solvang, 30 miles to our south. And so we've been producing in Solvang outdoor in the open air during the summer for the last 45 years. This is summer number 46.
Having worked there, it is absolutely beautiful. Gorgeous, all the spaces, Santa Maria and Solvang. I was lucky enough to perform, as you said, in The Importance of Being Earnest on the Solvang Theater. Just beautiful, beautiful part of the country. So let's jump into some questions for you. So with all this that's happening, as you know, Titan has postponed our production of Romeo and Juliet, and we rolled it into our hopeful 2021 season. And the other theater company I run, Hope Summer Rep, has canceled their entire summer season. Where are you at with PCPA?
Yeah, I was struck when you were asking that about saying your hopeful season.
Yeah, I know.
And I think all of us may end up entitling our next season our hopeful season. We were right in the midst of production when the COVID-19 crisis, and its response struck. We were in the midst of performing a production that I had directed of Shakespeare's Julius Caesar. We had happily opened the show. We're 6 performances in, and with a little pressure, because I just couldn't resist the deliciousness of it, we ended up giving the last performance on the Ides of March, on March 15th, which of course was the perfect way to send that out with some kind of, poetry. And California, of course, shortly after the Ides of March, issued a stay-at-home order. And so we're right now, we then postponed a production that we had pending of The Sound of Music. It was meant to actually open this last weekend. Actually, no, you know what? Tonight would have been the opening night for The Sound of Music. It's so that's on the long national lists of would-haves.
I said happy closing to my cast of Romeo and Juliet the other day, and we had 5 rehearsals. It was crazy. Yeah, absolutely. Sorry to interrupt.
So, no. And so we've essentially, we're meant to have a summer season of with 4 productions, both here in Santa Maria and in Solvang. And we essentially have pressed pause, and we honestly don't know what's going to happen. We've given ourselves till May 15th to make a final decision about a kind of go, no go on any production for the summer, which would, essentially take us through Labor Day, September 7th. But we know that we're going to be limiting what our summer season is. There's already been, pardon me, a significant impact on the, pre-production and build for The Sound of Music and for the other shows that we have in the queue. And so I don't know what's going to happen and then how we're precisely going to respond for it. But like you, I know we've, between when this all started and today, we built about 9 different contingency calendars. And appertaining budgets and staff plans and community rollout conversations. And we're right in the midst of that. And we were talking before, it's not, being unresolved does not equate to being indecisive. But, with a resident company, of course, the first thing that you're trying to take care of is the health and well-being of your people, keeping them physically healthy. But well-being also extends to, to what degree can we as leaders keep our people working, on mission, on task, and employed, and not part of this other economic epidemic that's happening of
Yeah.
of unemployment. You know, what's the number today? 25 million unemployed
Yeah.
Americans, and what the impact is going to be to our theater companies, to people's, you know, sense of safety turning up to the theater when we get into our hopeful seasons,
Yeah.
and you know, and their discretionary income and all of that. You know, that's the so it's interesting to try and crisis manage today, and keep looking ahead to what are the implications. But of course, you know, the thing that is the heart of my concern are the artists of the company, the students that we're training, and taking care of our people, and if possible, keeping them employed as long as possible. And that's the heart and gut-wrenching stuff that you and I are facing right now.
Yeah, that is truly the hardest thing. Is, you know, within the course of 3 weeks, I unemployed almost 150 people, and it's really hard to deal with that. You know, Hope did payouts, and we gave some payouts for Titan as well, and now creating this platform, the Shakespeare Online, that's causing this conversation. We're figuring out ways through online programming and almost a conservatory ourselves now.
Right.
Just a way to pay artists, even if it's just, you know, if we're teaching a couple hours a week, at least pays their cell phone bill. Anything we can do to try and keep things going is really important.
And you know, Lenny, I just wanted to say, you know, that the thing I've just kind of been coming to, because of course, you know, it's hard to be a philosopher when you're trying to put out a house fire, right? You know, I mean, mostly you're just like, man, I have the hose and the bucket or the axe in my hand and I'm working the problem. But I want to acknowledge for people who are in leadership that that, you know, it sort of circles back to that, how you doing? I'm fine. That there's this feeling like we ought to be in control. And that if, like, hey, if I'm not in control, I can't be much of a leader. If I can't control this thing, what kind of leader am I? And it creates this kind of, you know, panic-induced, you know, false narrative where you feel like your choice is either I'm in control of everything or I have no control of anything. And we know that that's not that's a false dichotomy. The truth is there are these huge, you know, titanic, if you will, things that are going on in the world that you and I can't control. But our responses and the quality of our responses, and a lot of that has to do with the quality of relationships that we maintain. The honesty, the transparency, the integrity, the people-centered decisions that we make, that's just the stuff that we can control. And it's real, I mean, and honestly, that's the stuff that's been keeping me afloat when I'll mix metaphors, when I've been gulping, you know, seawater because I feel like I'm going under. The thing that buoys me back up is trying to, you know, kind of close the circle of what my responsibility is and focus on the people of the company and the real people of my community that we're trying to serve. And otherwise, because if I spin into the, you know, like we're in a worldwide pandemic, I can just get lost.
Yeah.
So
you have to manage the problem on achievable levels with something that you can grab onto.
Yeah.
Because you're exactly right, and which is, you know, truly the blessing for, you know, how busy things have been right now is I don't want to say bury it, because you can't bury it. It's always kind of there. But to put it into the people and the work, and the people in particular, that's what I've been thinking about since the very beginning, is how do we just take care of each other?
Mm-hmm.
Number one, and whether that's my company, whether it's people in Michigan, whether it's friends in California, how do we do that as a community to support each other? You know, a lot of us are making masks and delivering them, and because we have massive custom shops that can produce masks, and that's these glorious things that come from this truly unique situation, which we've talked about, which is happening to everyone. And that's what's really unique about it. It's not like PCPA's problem or Titan's problem or Delaware's problem or Broadway's problem. It is a world problem,
Right.
And it's affecting all of us. And you know, why we're having these conversations to see how each of us are dealing with it and how our artists are dealing with it.
Right.
So, thinking about how to deal with it, what if we are looking at a new normal? What do you think are some ways that you could see theater evolving to adapt that? Now, you have an outdoor space, which is fabulous. Do you see, like, you know, coming back with social distancing within the audience? Do you think about doing bigger seasons outside at Solvang? Is there anything that you thought about in terms of what could get production going sooner? In a safe way, obviously.
Yeah, you know, I mean, sure. In a way, the good thing is safety and the public good, you know, are going to be paramount, and we're not, you know, however bold and visionary we may be, none of us are going to be able to do anything that where public safety isn't in the forefront. That has to be, and you know, and of course, you know, you and I are probably looking downrange at the, I think part of what the stress of this crisis is doing is, you know, crisis always clarifies. It always does, right? And so it also clarifies the fact that we're all saying, you know what, the ability of the community to gather together around story, to find unity, to find purpose, to find meaning around story is also a feature of public health. It's what makes us a civilization, you know, a society versus cohabitants. And so we, of course, and we have this kind of like, it's the good, and I think the real deep side of that urge to perform that we were talking about, that urge to be together, and to make meaning out of a situation is a kind of primal urge, and people want it. And I think that's getting clarified in this time. I don't think that our audience or our culture is going to leave this time of physical distancing craving more screen time, right? I think part of what's getting clarified is we're just like, gosh, I just want to be with other humans. You know, I have a longing for it. It's not an idea. It's this kind of like need. It's like a hunger that ultimately needs to be satisfied. And, you know, I've been wondering if we're going to get satiated as we talk here on Zoom, you know, but, you know, when are we going to get satiated with screen time? So I think that we're going to find an eagerness for people to get back together as soon as it's practical and safe. It's kind of hard to imagine. I think imagining people seeing a play in which social distancing is possible is going to be interesting to consider. We haven't thought super deeply about the practical logistics of that, but I think it's not a mysterious thing. Hey, we used to be this close. What if we're this close? I think the harder thing is, how do we make an art that they can see in a socially distanced way? How do you rehearse Romeo and Juliet? How do I rehearse The Sound of Music where my actors aren't, you know, at risk? And how do you have a costume fitting where people are socially distanced from one another? How does my scene shop operate? How do my ushers take the ticket of patrons in a way that's, you know, safe from a virology control standpoint? We started to ask some of those questions even, you know, before we went into this shutdown mode. I think everybody's been fond of saying it's not a light switch, it's going to be a dimmer switch. I think, you know, we'll be walking our way back into finding little, you know, micro ways of reintegrating with one another. But the core of it is always going to be, this art that we make is about getting people in the room together with other people. And that's going to create some restriction upon when it can really be happening again. I think until then, we're going to come up with super creative surrogate activities. You know, and those things aren't made theater by the fact that theater people do them. You know, this isn't. No,
it was a really strong point. And I'm glad you bring that up. Because Sandy Robbins brought it up last week, who you know as well, is that it's not theater. This, we can do Zoom play readings, which are great. We're about ready to do one on Monday, and
It's great.
It's lovely, and it was beautiful. But there's something about the gathering and this hunger, like you said. People for 4,000 years have been saying theater's a dying art form, yet it refuses to die. And they're like, well, this is it for theater. I think you're right. I think when we do come out of this and it is safe and the logistics are there and the precautions are put in place, that the need for, person-to-person storytelling is going to be higher maybe than ever.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, as we're talking about, which the next question is, almost going in the opposite direction, I believe theater is now, could be seeing its renaissance in terms of popularity and things like that, because everybody's like, oh, no one's going to the theater anymore. And yet we're still generating more income than agriculture and transportation combined. It's an amazing thing. So it's not a dying art form. It will continue to go.
Yeah, well, and I think this time of solitude, and all of us are having the chance to kind of reflect in times of isolation and solitude, and you and I remember that's like, wow, every great play we've ever done, every hero narrative, and we're all kind of the hero of our own narrative, it always starts with this time where we go away, either volitionally, we say, I'm gonna go into the cave or into the desert, and I'm gonna think about, and in that sense of isolation, I'm gonna figure out who I am, what's really important to me, what my purpose is, and then but then there's always this feeling that I'm gonna come out of the cave. I'm going to come in from the desert, and I'm going to restart my life. And I guess I'm not ready this early into this really terrible situation to say, I don't have a sense that this is normal, or that this is some kind of new normal. I don't think this is normal. I think we're in a crisis right now. It's this very long, agonizingly slow bus crash of a crisis, but I don't think it's going to go on forever, and I don't. It may change the way we perceive some of the afterward, and it's going to, for a time, it's going to change some of the actual afterward. But we're going to find a way to be together because we need to, because without it, we're not the kinds of humans that we aspire to be. The flip side of that hero's journey, the solitary confinement is like one of the worst tortures we can imagine, right? It's something when it's done to someone, as this situation is being done to us, it's considered cruel and inhumane. We know that we're going to find a way to get to the other side of it, to rejoin one another again. And so I'm not necessarily thinking that we need to reinvent the mechanism of the theater because its time has passed, because we're never going to be able to get together again. But I think we are going to have to be very facile and adaptive as we pass through this really hard time. And I'm not trying to be Pollyanna about the difficulty of the situation that we're in right now, but I'm still holding on to the belief, maybe naively, that there's another side of this.
Well, I think there is too. I don't think it'll be like this forever. I believe it is this way now, and we will adapt accordingly. Like I said, as long as it's safe, I think we'll find ways to be together. And if that's 4 seats apart, great. And if it's not, I think I know us at Titan would do that. As long as it's safe, I think we will figure out a way to move forward.
And don't you feel like this time, we've all been experiencing the negative aspects of being shaken up, but being shaken up is also really positive. And, it's that thing that Harold Klorman, said about, that the job of the artist is to awaken its audience, and the only way that we can do that is by being awake ourselves. And I think that we can get into our regular modes of being and sort of say, well, this is the way, this is the way to make theater. This is and you know, and then you get into something calamitous like this and you get shaken, and you have to ask yourself and your colleagues around you, well, hold on, what do we really believe? What are our
Yeah.
actual values? What are our genuine, I mean, no, not like the, you know, the website, you know, poetry. What do we really value? What do we really believe? Where are our true commitments? And then, you know, but what's also great is to sort of get back to basics about, you know, what we're doing is we're a gathering place. I mean, that togetherness thing, we're a gathering place for the community. The play is a mechanism for people to get together and investigate their own humanity and meaning. You know, it's just kind of tough when I was thinking, we always love to quote Hamlet and say, you know, that the purpose of playing is to hold, as it were, the mirror up to nature. It's really interesting when the players are having nature hold the mirror up to us, right?
Wow.
And go, hey, y'all, what are you doing? Who are you? Who are you when you can't gather? What's your sense of mission and purpose? And then who are you gonna be when you can resume this? And what's really important on the other side? You know, I honestly feel like, you know, ultimately, because we have learned to make meaning out of story, we're gonna figure out that this has taught us something pretty profound about what's actually important to us and to our organizations.
Yeah, I think that is well said. I don't, you know, think I can add much to that. That was well said, Mr. Booher. Good job. That was great. So we've been talking about the problems that we're all facing, and you kind of hinted at it. But what are the positives that you are finding? You know, you just said there is this chance. I know for us, in both my companies, there's the time to breathe and restructure all these things we've been wanting to do organizationally, especially here in New York, because you got to keep producing or else they'll forget about you.
Right.
We have this pause button hit and we get to go, all right, this is what we're focusing on. That's a huge positive for us. What are some of the positives that you've seen? You know, talking to you more, we talked about that, things like that. They can be professional, personal, what's going on?
Well, you know, I think that it's interesting. I think being forced to slow down, which is the only way that theater people will ever slow down.
Yeah,
you know,
right.
I mean,
You're exactly right.
We're sort of like these racehorses where it's like, you have to break my legs to get me to stop running. You know, I mean, and this, it's, as I was sort of, you know, implying, I think that you know, being forced into this situation where we have to pause and, you know, first ask what we're doing, but then also look at, you know, as you're saying, look at some of our functions that we never have time to question. You know, yeah, this is the way that gets it done, but does that make it the best way? If we could actually slow down and look at, how do we read plays together? How do we approach a design process? Is there only one good received way to do that? How do we interact together? Like even things about how do our practical processes play out? What kind of information and dialogues do include in a casting process? How do designers and cutter drapers and actors interact in the context of a costume fitting? You know, how does that scenic designer, you know, really communicate in the most effective way with that technical director? And we never have time to stop and go, you know, hey, how's that going for your shop? How's that going for your design process? How was the outcome of that casting situation? How did that play out? And the ability to actually slow down, have some interdepartmental conversations, have some inter-industry conversations about how we're doing the things that we're doing that aren't driven by our self-induced crisis of we got to get the show up.
Yeah.
You know, you know, we're going to try and make that as healthy as possible so that we're not simply doing a rinse and repeat when we come back into full production, that we can actually, you know, because we all want to work smarter, but it, you know, when somebody says that to you, when you're, you know, trying to get ready for a designer run, you're like, if you say that to me, I may kill you, you know.
Exactly.
You know,
Exactly right.
you know, and so I think we're certainly doing that. Our costume shop is making masks for the local community. You know, we're looking at trying to, you know, do some gown making. We're doing some actually literal physical infrastructure work. Because like, hey, I can finally get into that rehearsal hall to do that thing that we've been wanting to do. Let's take this time, because we need, you know, 2 people who can be socially distanced and they can do it, and they're still, you know, on contract. Let's make some work happen that otherwise was impossible. And my hope, and I wish I could say, I think you and other artistic leaders are well beyond me in this. I also think that this is a time to be in relationship with our audiences in new ways. And you know, I think the way in which you're tackling that, I'm kind of in awe of. We're still in the minor leagues of dancing with that, but in part that's also been driven by the fact that we've actually been able to keep some of our work going longer.
Well, as we wrap things up, there are 2 kind of what I refer to as the fun questions, as we, you know, just had our meat and potatoes. If there's one play you could do right now, what play would you pick?
You know, it was so fun to see the National Theater's content that they've been streaming. Bless them for, you know, providing that pre-packaged content that they already have. Their One Man, Two Governors, which was so fun, got to see it live in London. It was fun to see that revived online. Super fun. I think we're all ready for a great production of A Servant of Two Masters, or A Flea in Her Ear, or some great ribald, fast-paced, highly physical, door-slamming farce, because all of us feel torn between opposing natural forces, and I think it'd just be great to be able to translate that into laughter. You know, wouldn't you love to do The Importance of Being Earnest right now? And just be transported by something that is both sublime, but also just, you know, kind of makes your heart swell with joy. That's the kind of work, you know, I hope we're going to deliver soon after this. It's good for us to do the thoughtful, probative, cathartic work, and we're going to carry on doing that kind of stuff. You know, I know lots of great productions of King Lear, you know, will come after this. But,
everybody's
where we've been through the storm. But you know, I have to say, you know, I'm kind of hungry to work on something that has exuberance and joie de vivre, and, you know, and joy, and also kind of like muscle to it, where we get to enjoy the, you know, the physical being in the theater. I think so. So it's going to be interesting to see what crops up in our future seasons as we all start to think about, you know, also what makes something uniquely theatrical. I don't think that, you know, we're not going to want to do a bunch of heady talking head kitchen table dramas. You know, we're going to want to do big, kinetic, robust, muscular theater. And so it'll be, you know, I'm kind of craving something along those lines. That's about as fine a point as I can make it.
Yeah, I could use a good laugh, I'll tell you that. And all the plays that we're looking at leading off all the summers or seasons, we're gonna make people chuckle for a while. I think or make them feel love, or make them feel something like that. Like the reading we're doing on Monday is Last Train to Nibrock. Simple, 2 people falling in love over the course of 80 minutes. I watched that, and watching those 2 young people do that was a beautiful thing. Great. So we will end every creative conversation. I grill you for, you know, what we edit down to about a half an hour, but in all realistic things, it's an hour long. So I grill you for an hour. Now you can ask me any question you want. It's not rehearsed. It wasn't written down, and I will answer it as honestly as I can.
Wow. This is the one thing, you know, I was so busy being scared about what you were going to ask me that I think I've been shallow and thoughtless about what I might ask you, because
that's okay.
Because you're somebody who's, you know, I'd love to plumb your depths, but, you know, I guess I guess the thing that I'm sort of curious about is, do you have like, are you finding yourself a daily practice that on those days, because we're all having the days when it's tough to get up in the morning, you know, where just your body says, dude, don't do it, stay under the sheet. Are you finding something that you're just practically that's helping you? And I'm just thinking really simple. Is there some simple thing that you're doing that's kind of helping you get going when it's hard to get going in this really unusual time?
That's a fabulous question. You know, the other day somebody posted something saying, is anybody else having 1 or 2 days of really high level productivity followed by like a day of just complete despair? And I said, I can go through that in an afternoon. So what I've done, because, you know, the unique thing is, and I think a lot of people who know me, I think you would say this, I know that Sandy would say this, I know a million people would say, you know, I'm always going. I'm always doing something, you know, running 2 companies and 15 productions a year and doing all these things, right? For me, being quiet is a thing, you know, like slowing down. So what I've done is, in a weird way, I feel like I'm parenting myself. I'm limiting my screen time. I'm making sure that I go out for a walk, because me being crammed into my home office, you know, 2 months ago was a dream. And now it can hurt. So what I do is I set alarms and I go, because there's no real, like, there's deadlines to hit, but they're kind of these open-ended ones. So what I do is I make a lot of checklists. And when that checklist is done for the day, I go, I'm done. Because I could potentially, however long this quarantine lasts, my natural personality, I could work 15 hours a day every day for the next 3 months, which is not healthy. So I go, all right, today I'm going to accomplish these things. And it makes it actually, to go back to the original part of your question, how to get out of bed. If I go, look, I only have to do these 3 to 4 things today. And if I do that, it's a good day. And that's what I do. Yeah,
good stuff. Yeah, it's a little easier to rise when you don't feel like you're having to rise to save the entire planet.
Yeah.
Yep.
But you can't do it all in one day.
That's right.
And yet we have all this time that we feel we should fill it.
Right. But also, you know, but not to rise with a sense of fruitlessness about there's nothing that can be accomplished in this context.
Yeah. 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 It's a unique balance. And to give myself permission to go, take the afternoon off, man. So, you know, walk the dog for an hour rather than 10 minutes.
Yeah.
And it's a beautiful, beautiful thing. So, well, Mark, I want to thank you for your time. I really, truly appreciate it. And thank you for everybody who is watching. We will be back in 2 weeks with another interview with a mystery artistic leader from a portion of the country yet to be determined, but we will be announcing that soon. So with that, take care of yourself, Mark. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks. It's just been great. Great to see you, Lenny, and I'm honored to be here.
Yeah, great to see you too. Take care, everybody, and we'll see you next time.